So now we get to have a little bit of fun and create a really cool photo manipulation using cutout images to create something really cool with this strawberry photo. So I went ahead and sourced a photo that I can find of a man kind of hiking up a building, and I'm going to cut him out and put him on the strawberry, like he's hiking up the strawberry. So let's go ahead and cut this man out. There's a couple ways we can cut him out. We can, what I like to try, if there's enough contrast, is the magnetic lasso tool. So let's go ahead and cut him out. Just going to cut him out. This works really well for high contrast images where the image is very different from the background color. And in this case, this is cutting out very nicely. And I can go back and fine tune after I cut the object out. This is kind of a little more of a basic skill, but it's something you do constantly in the design world, is cutting objects and people out and moving them to different backgrounds. Something I do a lot, and it's something you really got to practice a lot. So just using the magnetic lasso tool, there's many ways to cut people out, but that seemed pretty simple. Let's make sure I'm happy with the selection. I can go back and add more or subtract more to my selection. Better to have too much than to cut too much. Better to have too much on the outside that you take with you and you can always trim it, as opposed to not taking enough. So I'm going to get the magic wand tool, going to get the subtract. I'm just going to subtract that little bit inside, and I'm ready to go. I can smooth out my selection by going to select and mask. And I like to add a little smoothness to my cutout and just a little bit of feather. A little bit of feather goes a long way. I'm going to click on OK. Now I can copy. Go ahead and paste it into my berry photo. So now that I copied and pasted the man we just cut out onto our strawberry layer, we now need to get an idea of scope and scale. So I want to make sure he's really tiny on the strawberry. I'm going to end up turning this into an ad. So I want to have him be really small. So let's go ahead and find the right sizing. And I'm going to flip him around horizontally. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and I'm just going to flip him horizontally, just so I can get the right area to put him in. So I thought maybe he'd be climbing up the little holes here that are left by the seeds in the strawberry. That's how he's climbing up. So just trying to make it as realistic as possible. So now we can do a little adjustments to the lighting. So now we can zoom in a little bit. Let's kind of zoom out just a tiny bit, maybe 150 or 100. So now we're going to make some adjustments to make sure the strawberry lighting matches him. And I'm going to go in a little bit. I'm going to end up replacing what he's holding on to here. I guess it's some kind of squeegee or something. I'm going to delete that. We're going to replace that with some other type of brush. We're going to try to make it look like he's cleaning the strawberry for our ad. Let me just kind of going in. I'm just manually deleting using the polygon lasso tool. Kind of more of a simple way to delete things. So that looks a little bit better. And I can still see kind of some areas. Maybe I could take the magic wand tool. Some areas I can delete off of his face. Just fine-tuning my selection. Maybe that little bit of gray doesn't need to be there. Let me just manually select that with the polygon lasso tool and delete that. And no one's going to be able to see him this close, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so let's zoom out to 100% and let's do some lighting changes. Okay, so let's try to make him as realistic as possible with this strawberry. Let's go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. And we're just going to eyeball it and see what looks better. I think a low contrast might blend better. So I just reduced it all the way to -50. I could go back and do the same thing again, continuing to lower the contrast. Maybe not as much. Maybe reduce, we don't want too many highlights because he's going to look out of place. Maybe reduce the brightness. And vibrance. Vibrance is another one I use. Oops. Kind of going through all of my selections here. Yeah, there's vibrance. It was over here off the screen. Let's increase it and see what happens. Reduce it. So I'm going to reduce it, but increase the saturation. So his yellow bucket pops out a little more. And I could probably smooth out his selection so he looks like he's sharply cut out. There's a lot of sharp edges. So if I zoom in, I can select this layer, go ahead and get maybe the magic wand tool. I'm going to click anywhere outside of him, and then I'm going to select the inverse. So now he is selected, and I'm going to go up to select and mask. I'm just going to smooth out the edges here. So I'm going to just increase the smooth, increase the feather just a little bit, kind of see if I can make that a smoother cutout. I'm going to click OK, and let me delete. Oops. Let me select inverse again and see if I can get the outside edges. Perfect. That's smoothed out selection. Let me do before, after. Okay, great. So let's continue to work on our strawberry. I want to go ahead and have one more subject matter that's kind of interacting with the strawberry. I already cut them out of the photo, and I'm just going to paste them in here. So we want to get a good sense of balance. So we don't want them to be too big or too small. So let's do balance. She's going to be a little bit bigger than he is because she's going to be more in the foreground. I'm going to have her right here. So I'm going to make her a little bit bigger. You can always make her smaller and put her right here. So now we're going to work on integrating these guys a little bit more. Right now they just look like they're floating on top of the strawberry. Let's zoom in and practice our shadowing. So this is when painting on our shadows will really help bring some realism to this. So let's add a new layer. This is going to be our shadow layer, and we're going to drag this layer underneath the man. Let's grab our paintbrush tool. Let's go ahead and do dark, very dark black, and make it a big enough feathered brush. And let's just kind of figure out where these shadows are going to be. So we're going to see the light is maybe cast down here because you see the light on his back. So let's kind of paint some shadows where we think he might be. So maybe it casts right around there. We can take the eraser tool and make that a little bit smaller. He's not going to have any shadows cast on this side of his body. Let's erase any of that, and maybe I need to do a little bit down here, a little bit right there. Let's go ahead and reduce the opacity on this layer all the way down. This is very subtle, and we could even add another layer. Do the same thing, but we're going to make this an even more intense shadow. So this is only going to be right here at the very edge. Get our eraser tool. We don't need quite as much. And let's reduce the opacity, not as much as we did the other shadow layer, the shadow dark. So I'm going to toggle, I'm going to do that 50%. And I'm going to toggle this darker layer we just created. It just kind of adds a little more depth. So you have a darker layer and you have a lighter layer. So let's see what that looks like when we zoom out. That looks a lot better. So let's go back to where it was before. So that was before. So look, lack of shadows, and then we're adding the shadows. So that adds a lot of realism. And of course we need to do some work on the man and maybe bring down these highlights a little bit. They're a little too strong, and try to get the shadow, the highlights and some adjustments on this photo to better match this photo.